Hello everyone. In this proposal, I will explore the role and importance of the uncaring mother in Riggs fiction and how the maternal figure of the inbring helps the children to cut emotional ties with the family of origin who cannot accept them. The peculiar mother proves also to be a source that also articulates and mirrors the loss of the mother figure and creates a stagnation of trauma. Riggs, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children explores the social taboo of the uncaring mother and the difficulty of navigating the traumatic loss for the desolate child and the changing relationship with mother. In doing so, Riggs fiction provides artistic expression for the process of individuation for the child, and thanks to the uncanny elements that combine to create a fantastic reality where peculiar children live as outcasts from a society that can understand their nature, it helps young teenagers to navigate the process. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is a contemporary fantasy young adult fiction series written by Ransom Riggs, and it features paranormal events and beings. The series focuses on Jacob's adventures with the peculiar children throughout time and space. In the first trilogy, we have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Hollow City, and Library of Souls. But as you can see, the series continues. Right? We are going to focus, for the purposes of this proposal, mainly on the first trilogy, where there is an important influence of the mother figure, and also due to the brevity of this video, I will summarize the plot of the series to its minimal expression, but this does not reflect the complexity of the books and all the events they portray. In this case, I focus on the protagonist's changing relationship with his mother and how this is mirrored by the presence of Miss Peregrine. In the first book of the series, where the adventure begins, Jacob, who is a 16-year-old boy from Florida, discovers some disturbing details about his grandfather and his obsession about an imminent threat. The information Jacob then gathers from his grandfather's cryptic messages after his death leads him to a remote island in Wales where his grandfather had spent his childhood in a children's home during the Second World War. Jacob locates Miss Peregrine, who is the warden of those children and who is surprisingly still alive. Jacob then steps into the past when he visits the children's home and enters into a realm of time loops and a family legacy of loss and desolation. They have several adventures trying to escape a monstrous presence who is trying to attack the peculiar children, while Miss Peregrine is stuck in her bird form and cannot transform into a human anymore. There are dangers in the worlds and loops they visit, and all the while the children have to develop and mature as they have to make their own decisions about their own lives and protect each other. The protagonist's changing relationship with his mother is an important theme in most of this first trilogy, and it finds a more nuanced point of articulation in his new relationship with Miss Peregrine and her motherly qualities. Riggs fiction provides then expression for the abstract psychic processes that are involved in this individuation process of the child from his mother, as it combines aptly horror, humor, and hope in a very enticing way for young readers that can identify with the main character's struggle to negotiate his own budding identity apart from his birth family. Mother is the first experience of self. She is a reference for the environment that will surround us, and she is also the first impression we have of what we have to consider as home. That is, the place where each of one of us lived once upon a time, according to Freud. The social role of the mother in Western societies has been identified with only positive traits since the 18th century, where feminine traits of tenderness, need to nurture, instinctive sensitivity, and compassion were constructed into an ideal portrait of motherhood in industrialized patriarchal societies. This has become the socially expected and constructed relationship without taking into account that it has changed along the cultural changes too. As our first connection to the world and to ourselves, mother plays a primary role in the emotional well-being of children and their healthy development into society, together with the mutual assistance, of course, of family members and other relationships. But she constitutes the child's source for deep, meaningful experiences of shared connection, knowing and being known, mutual trust, concern and caring, mutuality and commitment, and this all will help, of course, the child into social relationships with others. However, maternal love is not instinctual. It is a love where the beloved is not a peer, it is directed towards an unchosen object of love. You cannot choose your mother, and the mother cannot choose her child. It can be differentiated from the duties of nourishment and caring, that is, unloving parents can fulfill their duties to their children and not care or love them. This usually reflects in the attunement to the child's emotional needs, identity, and personality. So, mother's body can then be the most boring space in human nature because it can be both the site for the deepest mutuality, but also the most painful estrangement. And to make this estrangement even more painful for the child, its reality is usually socially repressed. In the dominant cultural ideals in the Western world, the mother-child dyad is seen as sacred, and it is an unwritten taboo to talk about your mother in a critical way. It is then a social assumption that every mother is nurturing and self-sacrificing and that she is doing the best she can with the resources at her disposal. So challenging this social perception of ideal motherhood is both a personal and cultural shame. This strong cultural idealization of unconditional parental love does not admit other realities, and it leaves the child with a desolate idea of self and unable to articulate the trauma of an uncaring mother. Jacob's realization of the newfound emotional separation he feels from his mother comes in full when he revisits the overall role his mother has played in his childhood. It is then that Jacob allows himself to contemplate critically his experience of his mother, and this reveals that his mother is an uncaring individual with no emotional attunement to him, now that he's a teenager and is finding his own voice. Jacob's mom is a woman who has restricted his imagination and self-expression, and still does. The change is just that Jacob has become aware of it. She prefers her son to have practical ambitions over what she defines as an infection and an excess of imagination. In this sense, she is shown solving Jacob's early, overwhelming imaginative world by breaking reality into known entities and the imposition of an abrupt end to his fantasies. She is therefore the enforcer of reality, and she makes the law in any decision concerning Jacob's activities, expressions, and emotions in such a way that it is expected, and whenever Jacob's imagination prevails, he knows what her expected reaction would be. Jacob's mother has no emotional awareness of the child's needs, and she constantly invalidates his own choices and any possible self-expression. This is exemplified when she asks him to feign gratitude even when his family is not attuned to his tastes or hobbies, and therefore his budding personality. She is only worried about external appearance in front of others and keeping up appearances, especially on the emotional level. So any open show with emotional turmoil or expression is not allowed to happen in public, and she effectively cuts any outbursts short with imposition of her own law. This leads her son to painfully realize that mother is an ambivalent source of love, a woman who secretly resents the presence of both her husband and child in her life. Jacob is then confronted with this knowledge and the realization of the cultural taboo of unconditional love for one's mother, even if he feels betrayed, knowing she fakes the love she feels for him. This moment of realization is a very important point in the narrative, as it shows the dichotomy of love and duty, the taboo of the uncaring mother. Jacob is then forced to re-signify his mother's supposed love when he first discovers she resents him. And yet he finds himself limited by the imposition of mandatory love and with the burden of even not hurting her feelings with reproaches. There is a marked distinction in Riggs' fiction between the roles of birth mothers and inbrings. The figure of the mother is therefore separated into two different types of characters. The positive aspects are projected onto the inbring, a shapeshifter, peculiar woman who can create loops and control time, while the birth mother is a desolate landscape of rejection for the child. By separating the dual nature of mother into two different characters and environments, Riggs' narrative follows other narratives of contemporary young adult fiction that have dealt with cutting the emotional tie with the mother and her individual identity. This helps children process their emotions so that they can focus all of the hurt and anger on those individual aspects of their parents' personalities that they dislike. The peculiar mother is a nurturing figure who reestablishes the comforting connection of the child and the mother. Miss Peregrine earns the title of mother of the peculiar children because she restores the unfulfilled maternal obligations by offering love and support to recover from the emotional shock and loss. She is a mother figure who inspires trust because she is a reliable source of comfort for the children, and she is compassionate and perceptive. So she embodies the longing children have for a positive mother figure and the hope of finding love and acceptance. Jacob's emotional distance with his family threatens to dislocate him from reality. His self is divided and he feels disintegration in his life. His need to choose the peculiar world or the world he has inhabited and where his origin family lives also translates into this sense of displacement. He can face this painful realization thanks to the maturational process he has undergone, relying on Miss Peregrine for support. By the fourth book of the series, Jacob can finally assert his independence and autonomy by assessing himself his own place of standing in the conflict and situate himself in an in-between position that cannot be fully appraised by any side. So he has what he wanted. He embodies a mingling of worlds and can navigate those worlds in and out and accepting that he cannot count on his parents' support and the emotional distance that he feels towards them is bigger. In Riggs' narrative, there is an emphasis on the different types of care and love that parents provide for their children, and the peculiar children become painfully aware of this difference, especially once the child manifests peculiarity. This places the individual in a position of hurt and distrust and isolated from the family. Going back home and to mother does not always constitute a happy ending, and in the case of Riggs' narrative, the reincorporation of identity development has to happen outside home, has to happen with the peculiar mother, because the family environment cannot cope with even the slightest hint of abnormal behavior, as it will medicate it, elaborate it into a clinical form of containment and silence, or altogether shun and reject it. Home then is somewhere else, not even in an ideal past, because revisiting the past that has ejected the peculiar child is not a good idea. As Miss Peregrine reflects on her own painful experience, there is a difference between being blood relatives, understanding, care, and love. She can now differentiate and understand her parents loved her in some way, but not in a way that could make her feel understood and care, because they feared her abnormality. True to Miss Peregrine's own perception and contemplating her own legacy of rejection, our blood relationships often don't survive the truth of what we really are.